Hello and welcome to Editors Unplugged. Zaka, Jacob, Madhav Das, Gopala Krishnan, Shreya Dhondial here with me. And today's topic is about something which hits every home. We are talking about ethanol-blended petrol, E20. The debate is raging. And let's start with Zaka because he was in conversation with the Petroleum Minister, Hardeep Puri. There were many questions. Did you get all the answers? Does the government have all the answers?
Yeah, I mean, look, I asked him all the relevant questions, the questions that the people are asking about, is this scientifically proven? If there is a reduction in mileage, then how will you compensate consumers and so on? So I asked him everything, and he has a sort of a ready reckoner answer for all of this. The first thing is, I think, what you've seen is my interview with Mr. Puri, but also earlier this week I met with Mr. Gadkari. So I've met both the ministers concerned on this issue, and I've come away that on the scientific part, whether E20 is a scientifically tested fuel, I think I'm absolutely convinced it is. It leads to reduction in emissions. It is a better fuel than your normal petrol. And yes, the government has conceded, or both the ministers conceded, that there is a mileage drop. The only issue is, like I said, I asked him the question about if there's a 3 to 5% mileage drop, then why don't you reduce fuel prices by 3 to 5%? I'm not sure the government is quite convincing in their reply. And two, on this whole question of why was this not announced, when E20 got introduced in April 2025, or why are you not giving consumers the choice? I mean, I want to fill E0, I want to fill E10, I want to fill E20. Again, the government's logic is it's logistically too difficult. You have to have separate fuel tanks, underground fuel tanks across 1 lakh plus fuel stations in the country. So other than those two things where the government maybe could have done better, on the fundamental issue of is ethanol blended fuel better for consumers, for farmers, for the environment, that I'm convinced that yes, it is.
What are the ministers saying about the environmental impact? Yes, it's a biofuel, therefore it's better for the environment in one way, but also look at the fact that to produce 1 liter of ethanol, you're using some 300 liters of water, 3,000 liters of water
there is a
in a water-starved country.
There is a misnomer here. So the Niti Aayog report says that to grow sugarcane, for example, you need about 2,000 odd liters of water. Now, the government's contention is we are not stopping the growing of rice or sugarcane or maize. These are the 3 primary crops from where which are converted into ethanol. What they are taking is the excess stock from the FCI, whether it is rice, whether it is sugarcane, whether it is maize, they are converting that excess stock into ethanol. So the water that is used to grow the crop is being grown for consumption, for eating. The crop is not being grown just for ethanol. A percentage of that crop is then used to blend ethanol or to manufacture ethanol. So the water that's consumed is to grow the crop, and the crop is for food. It's
but
not
Zaka,
for. It's
if we are going to go for E85 or E100,
yes,
right? Then you are going to obviously need to grow that much more, and that is the stated national policy.
So one second. So when you
grow sugarcane, the entire idea is to move away from water-intensive crops like sugarcane.
When you do that, you will need more water. But the fundamental point is that crop is being grown irrespective of ethanol. It's not like sugarcane was not grown 20 years ago. It's not like there wasn't excess rice 20 years ago.
Yeah, but there's a problem with that, and I'll tell you what the problem is. Even if, as we are talking, there's a controversy between Tamil Nadu and Kerala over sharing of Kaveri water. That entire Kaveri belt, and I've traveled there extensively, huge amount of sugarcane plantation, and the farmers don't want to change. They want to only plant sugarcane in an area where water is anyway a contentious issue. Look at Western UP over here. The sugar mills over there, and the problems that sugarcane farmers have typically held. So while this might be very good from the perspective of picking up that excessive load, etc., there are some very serious issues about whether the government should also be looking at changing cropping patterns, particularly in areas which are close to urban centers where water supply is seriously an issue. There's another issue that I also want to talk about, which is that, US has been pushing us to take a lot of the agricultural products, and they've been pushing us to take corn and other, GM products, which we've said cannot be used for consumption, for human consumption purposes. But does it become another cup of tea when it comes to producing ethanol? And how much of that will figure in the trade deal if and when it's finalized?
No, which is fine.
Before we speak about the environmental concerns, the biggest stakeholder is the car, if you take car as an entity. So, while he says that the government is convinced that this is all scientifically done, etc., etc., Okay, but if this is scientifically done, the rollout could have been better in terms of policy. Now, there's compliance issue, and there's also a issue about compensation that you said that you asked him, but the government does not want to take a view.
Yeah. No,
I
they
have
can't reduce fuel prices because the finances, the central government finances are very sticky right now because of the war and so on. They will not reduce retail petrol prices. I don't see that, at least until the next few months. So they're not reducing retail fuel
compliance. Many people are complaining of, the engines being
So
damaged.
here's the thing. So I asked him the same thing. Both the ministers, by the way. Hardeep Puri told me Maruti Suzuki, which is the largest car seller in the country, has done 1.5 crore services since April 2025 when E20 was released. They are saying not a single complaint is related to fuel. There could be engine complaints, but it's not related to the fuel. Now, this is Maruti Suzuki. You saw that press conference where the top
Well, it
manufacturers
looked
were there,
like a fixed
Toyota,
match.
etc.
It looked like a fixed match. Please, that press conference looked like a complete fixed match.
But
Zaka,
then
look at the
all the
Chalo, ek minute.
automobile manufacturers will have to lose face if this actually
Exactly.
happens.
Acha, nahi, nahi.
I don't
So
know. Would they really stake
No, no,
that?
and
Here's my
the
thing.
thing.
Here's my
Draw a
thing.
line.
The government may be convinced on the policy. Great. How have you communicated with the people of this country?
Yeah, that's an
दुनिया भर के viral videos बन रहे हैं where you have mechanics, where you have motorists saying mileage drop हो रही है, mileage drop हो रही है, mileage drop
No,
हो रही
the
है.
government itself is
But they
conceding
came out
mileage is
later.
dropping.
But वो तो that came later. ठीक है. What was the first reaction of the government? This is one big foreign hand that is trying to destabilize our fuel policy. दुनिया भर के लोग are saying that not just mileage drop, it is impacting our engines as well.
Mileage
What is
drop,
the
the
government?
government is conceding.
अरे
Yeah.
बाबा, it happened later is what I'm trying to say. ये तो एक डेढ़ महीने से चल रहा है, right? All these viral videos to which the government has reacted have been in the ether for the last 1.5 months or so, where motorists and mechanics and people who know and deal with cars are saying कि mileage drop हो रही है. The fact is that it is impacting the engines, etc.
Yeah.
Now, should the government have communicated better? You woke up after a
But
month
they
and a
are-
half
they
to
are
communicate.
saying-
कुछ
in
नहीं
fact,
होगा.
Mr. Gadkari told me, you bring me one person, two-wheeler or four-wheeler owner, who is saying that his engine performance is dropped because of the fuel. I will examine it and I will compensate him from my own money. In fact, he's saying all the 10
saying
manufacturers
that-
who had that press conference have given their written approval before April 2025 when the switch was made from E15 at that time to E20, have
I
given
think
their
there's a-
written approval
Yeah.
that we have tested our vehicles for lakhs of kilometers and we have found that there is no issue as far as engine is concerned. Again, the government is conceding there are some rubber parts in older
Correct.
cars, in rubber
Correct.
parts. There are some gaskets and things like that which may be affected, which may need replacement because of the fuel, but not engine.
But
Engine is a different.
What was the first reaction that the government gave us when this question about mileage was asked, when the question about these rubber parts being impacted was asked? What was the government sources say? Wala information that had come out. It essentially said that no, nothing is happening, and this essentially is a ploy to destabilize
Our energy security.
Our energy security. That can't be the response to everything.
that-
That Satluj
I
ko
think the
humne
larger
ban kiya
question-
because national
No, I
security.
think, you know,
Everything
I
was
think the
happening.
larger point-
Guys, no, one second.
Yeah.
The one thing that this war has taught us in these last 3 months is we have a huge vulnerability
Yeah.
when it comes to our energy. I mean, we are importing 88% of our fuel. That's a huge vulnerability. And if ethanol-blended fuel helps reduce the amount of crude you're importing, I think that's a good thing.
No,
No,
I agree.
I don't think anybody can disagree with that point. We need to be more self-reliant in every which way, whether it's our manufacturing capabilities, whether it is not relying on the Gulf of fuel. All those points are given. There is no two ways about it. But I think the point that she's trying to make and a concern, especially when it concerns the entire swath of the public, middle class, you want your economy to grow. People are buying not just new cars, there's a class that's buying second-hand cars. So all those people and all these aspirational dreams are being thrown at them for economic prosperity. You have to be transparent with the public at large.
Correct.
Because when you don't do that, you're giving the opposition a chance to come out and raise questions. Those questions may be factually wrong. The questions will be totally, not on point. But the point is the onus is on government. And this is not the first time that we're seeing an important policy decision or a big law being brought in where the ideas being communicated to people is not happening at the speed at which perhaps they should. And I think that's the big learning for the government in this, especially when it comes to public transport, when it comes to personal transportation, rather in this case, cars, vehicles, etc. These are things that people really sort of connect with. Look at what happened in Delhi when they started seizing old cars and the kind of backlash that caused. And finally, the government had to call off all those kinds of things. So when it comes to such things, the government has to be sensitive.
So you're talking
has
about
to be communicative.
the rollout.
Absolutely, the rollout and communicating. Why can't you just come out and, if the same fact check which the government is now putting out, which Mr. Puri is talking about, they could have put it out 6 months, 1 year ago when they started the testing.
And like Zaka is saying for the minister, for Mr. Gadkari to say that you bring me one person, it is not the job of, television editors to get people. I mean, there are many people like Tehseen Poonawala has launched a campaign, so to say, and he's been on social media at least saying that, Mr. Gadkari, I want to come and see you, sir, etc., etc. The ministry can at least organize what you have, like Lok Adalats, Vaisa kuch, that kind of infrastructure where normal people can go.
Absolutely. Ethanol is an inevitability. See, look at the fact. Look at Brazil, which has done this many years ago. I think Brazil is the case to be studied in this entire ethanol controversy because they've done it decades ago.
No, but Brazil, if you have to study, then you must study
in
entirety. Of course, the fact that they're giving choices, the fact that they're giving... I completely agree. But
the fact that the ethanol program actually began in 1931.
Exactly. So the point
the fact that 80% of their vehicles are flexi-fuel vehicles.
Correct.
The fact that they give their consumers the choice. There are dual pumps there.
Yeah, but
you can either buy petrol.
But the minimum there is, Hardeep told Zaka, the minimum there is E27.
Yeah,
so that's also the
E27,
difference.
they're going
The
to go
base
to
is
E35.
E27. They're going to go all the way up there. See, flex fuels are going to happen. And this is exactly the point. And this is the reason why I'm highlighting the government's communication point of view. We're looking at a time where as consumers, there is the choice. If you have to go to buy a car today, you can either buy a diesel car, which in cities like Delhi, you can only use for 10 years. The advantage of buying a petrol car is that while it might be a little bit more expensive, you can use the vehicle for 15 years. Or you have an EV. EVs, again, there were not so many charging points. Now a lot more, facilities, infrastructure to actually physically charge your electric vehicles that you have. So when a person is investing in a car today, it's a huge decision. It's like one of the few decisions you take. You invest in a house maybe once in your lifetime, and you maybe invest in a car 3 or 4 times in your lifetime, right? That's about your working life that's completely taken. So it's a very important decision for any middle class person. So I think that aspect should have been very clearly thought out and should have been very easily communicated. So if these programs were going on for the last 2-3 years, why not put out? These are the results that have come in 6 months, 1
one
year
of the
out.
things, we were talking about vulnerabilities, and the war has shown how vulnerable we are to imported fuel, right? 85% of our crude is imported. Do you know that 95% of EV batteries are manufactured in China?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, that's, to my mind, that's a bigger vulnerability than oil. You've now diversified to 40-odd countries and so on. But 95% of the world's EV batteries are manufactured by China. Tomorrow they can just turn the tap off.
So was that the conspiracy theory? Was that the foreign hand that they were talking about? It's the EV industry that is trying to destabilize.
I think they're talking more about the traditional fossil fuels. But I just want to add one small factoid to this point of the EV. China, and we know how much of advanced planning they do. It's not just the fact that they have dominance over EVs or EV manufacturing or battery manufacturing. They even have a dominance over lithium, which is used to actually make those batteries. So they own 90% of the lithium mines. So if tomorrow someone in India wants to manufacture batteries, even that person has to go to China so that he can get the raw material to make the battery.
Now that we've addressed public concerns, at least discuss them. No clear answers on some issues. It's we are going after Zaka. He's not the minister.
I had the same concerns. I had the same concerns till I met both of them over the past week. And at least on the scientific part, I'm convinced, yes, there is nothing scientifically wrong with ethanol-blended fuel, even with E20. I may partially concede that, the government could have communicated it better. Maybe,
Zaka, the fact is that when does, we are trying to model our ethanol ecosystem on whom? Brazil, right? When does Brazil start? Forget 1931. They actually start in the mid-70s. And they have had 50 years to build that entire ecosystem. It was a long-term plan, right? Because your auto industry will need to adapt, people will need to adapt, policies will need to adapt. आप 3-4 साल में सब कुछ रश थ्रू करोगे तो वो फंबलिंग तो होगी.
इसमें मैं एक बोलना चाहता हूँ because you're talking of the ecosystem. Look at the commentary of the ecosystem, ma'am. It has been, dishonest and not sincere. The Congress party that talked about ethanol blended petrol has a problem today. Only after people, started circulating old clips of Manishankar Iyer, etc., that the Congress party or Congress leaders sort of have, they've taken a back seat, so to say. बट वैसे तो ऑन द फेस ऑफ इट सबको प्रॉब्लम था.
आप शराब मत पीजिए, में इथेनॉल ब्लेंड करना है. That's what he
नहीं,
said.
but इसमें the opposition का तो खैर इतना हल्ला नहीं हुआ था. हल्ला was more with influencers who were going on social media.
Opposition का भी हुआ था मैम. Irresponsible commentary it takes away from the.
But that wasn't the they were not dominating the narrative. What was dominating the narrative
were
was
misleading.
the videos.
That is the problem.
ठीक है, but it was the videos on
ठीक
social
नहीं है
media.
मैम. If your own government came out with a policy तो ठीक कैसे?
भैया लेकिन सिर्फ opposition को नहीं, इस देश के लोगों को भी तो
सवाल तो शुरू किया हमने मंत्री जी से.
लेकिन इस देश के लोगों को भी तो सवाल थे ना. उन सवालों का जवाब आपने कब दिया?
मिसलीड कर रही है कांग्रेस पार्टी तो. उन्होंने
और गवर्नमेंट चुप बैठी है, which is better.
By the way, this ethanol policy was first introduced in 2001 in Mr. Vajpayee's government.
Yeah.
The reason why it didn't really take off was because we didn't have scale, and we didn't have. I mean, the manufacturers at that time, the car manufacturers, the two-wheeler manufacturers at that time, were not able to make engines that are compatible with ethanol-blended fuel. Even after 2014, even after Mr. Modi came to power, we went from I think E0 to E5. The real turning point happened during the COVID years, because again they realized that we need to do something because we're dependent on crude oil imports so much, and ethanol is one option. Then there were teams that were sent to Brazil, etc. The switch to E10 happened in 2022, right after the COVID years. So from 2022 we're using E10, and from 2025 we've gone to E20. So I think, see, also once you crack a formula, it happens in science, right? Once you crack a formula, then the iterations of that formula will happen faster than the initial crack. It's like
research takes longer.
Yeah, I mean, you took however number of years.
The road.
Yeah,
we're going to take this road and we'll follow.
I mean, you took X number of years to send a person to the moon, right? But after that, there have been so many people who've sent people to the moon. So it's a question of cracking the formula. I think India cracked it around the years right after COVID. After which, now, for example, the transition from E20 to E25, barring this controversy and all of this stuff that has happened, if this was not there, I think we would have got to E25 faster than we got from E10 to E20. But the problem is now the government has to deal with all of this surround sound.
I'm interested to know that, so we've been using E20 now for at least a year, all of
Correct.
us, right?
From April 2025.
Right. Then why did the halla suddenly happen for E25?
So he has a theory about it. Again, I'm not saying that you have to believe everything that he says. It's not the gospel truth. His theory is, and he said this publicly, theory is all this halla started after June 5th because the oil lobby was active, the EV lobby was active, and they've all come out with these social media videos because suddenly if India were to import, let's say 20% less oil or 30% less oil, then a lot of people get affected.
They actually believe that all the videos that these mechanics and motorists were putting out was sponsored by the oil lobbies.
They believe
No, I mean, that is not true. Let's not, fall for this
I'm not a
narrative
conspiracy theorist, but like I said,
Yeah, because
I love
we've seen fake
conspiracies,
videos,
but-
we've seen fake videos.
No, so paid videos
Voter
hote
list
hain.
mein
There was that
naam
one
kat
video
gaya,
from Bihar.
etc.
Paid
There's
videos
that one
bhi
video
hote
from
hain.
Bihar which
There
is
is
being
no
talked about
doubt
where the
that.
fuel that was used itself was not the
Yeah,
correct fuel.
adulterated,
So,
yeah.
adulterated. So that there
जो
are
भी है, so there are facts, frustrations और fakery तो मैम होता ही है. तो just because someone made a video does not mean
But
you fall.
does it
अब आप
mean
बोलेंगे
that-
इसमें कोई बात नहीं.
नहीं, देखो ऐसा है कि 100 वीडियो में से आई कैन मानो चलो 5 have been sponsored by some oil lobby, but यार वो मैकेनिक की वीडियो को साफ देख के लग रहा है
Actually,
कि
AI
वो
videos इतने ज्यादा है सोशल मीडिया पे, it's very hard to put a number. 5 है कि 95 है, it's very hard to say because today
there was
the
some
amount of
specific reference to a guy called Kashyap. Some Kashyap.
Yeah,
I
Manish
think,
Kashyap,
I think from
yeah.
the Bihar video that you're referring to.
Influencer turned neta.
Turned out to be
Yeah.
fake because apparently they called him. Both the ministers in their respective ministries called him and said, please send us your vehicle, we'll get it tested. And he refused.
So also this,
Toyota ने टेस्ट भी किया था. Many
And
things
then it- yeah,
have
then
been
it turned out that,
found to be untrue. इसीलिए मैंने fakery बोला.
But I want to know one thing. What happens to hydrogen vehicles now? Mr. Gadkari was talking
Well,
about that a few years
they're
ago.
pushing
What
green
happens to them?
hydrogen in a big way. They are
Yeah.
pushing green hydrogen in a big way.
So ethanol and hydrogen will go hand in hand then?
No, it'll be separate vehicles. Green hydrogen
No,
has to be separate.
obviously there will be separate vehicles, but then
Yeah, the policy will have
Policy will-
E20 में choice नहीं दे रहे. वो hydrogen के logistics tasks sort out
I'm
करें.
very interested to know these flexi vehicles. By when should we expect them in the market, and will they be much costlier? Because if they are much costlier, I mean,
But apparently the fuel is 20 rupees less. So if you're paying 100 rupees a litre, you'll get Flexi-Fuel for 80 rupees a litre. So that
But there was
itself is
also
a big
some talk
incentive.
about the cost of manufacturing ethanol going up. I was reading about that as well, that earlier it was much cheaper a few years ago, but I think the raw material cost, for some reason, the cost of ethanol has gone up. So will it really be that much cheaper than petrol? Also becomes a question then. What is the advantage
Brazil
of
में
shifting?
30% difference है, which is why people overwhelmingly by choice have switched to ethanol blended petrol. यहाँ पर तो neither is the choice, neither is it
The
cheaper.
difference is that the price of ethanol is fixed once. So the price of sugarcane, the procurement of price of sugarcane is fixed once a year,
Right.
by the government. It's a part of the MSP. Whereas the price of crude changes every day. Suddenly, if there's a war, crude can go from $70 to $120.
Before we-
Whereas ethanol
Yes,
is fixed
bleeding
once a
foreign
year.
exchange, which is the hugest thing.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
government
Yeah,
has
so while the
always
government
talked about.
saves on money, consumers का भी थोड़ा ख्याल रखना चाहिए because in a country like ours, mileage is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You buy anything, सबसे पहला सवाल, despite the strata that you come from or belong
Mileage
to,
कितना है?
mileage कितना है?
You remember that famous, I think it was a Maruti Suzuki ad where this little boy, Sardar boy, is saying, petrol khatam hi nahi hota. That's the essence of India.
Yeah. So that question, the government conceding कि mileage कम हुआ है, लेकिन price कम नहीं हुआ है, तो this will blow up into a political issue. It is. But like I said, now people are linking this to elections, etc. That is not true.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
So we have to be measured and responsible. सवाल जो भी है, there are many questions. Like at least दो तो हमने यहाँ discuss कर लिया जिसका कोई clear answer नहीं है. But we have to be wary of posts on social media that Shreya ma'am believes कि उसके हिसाब से चलना.
If the government is responding to them, and that's the only reason why the government
government
is
is not.
responding to them
Government
and
is saying
giving
there is no
interviews to
outrage.
Zaka Jacob,
No, I
so
think-
there is something in those posts, na? There are some concerns that the government felt needed to be addressed. पहले कर देते तो इतनी बेइज्जती नहीं होती.
No, because people also end up believing those posts, rightly or wrongly.
Obviously,
If it's
social media,
misinformation,
fake
I
posts
agree,
will be believed
I
more
agree
than
with the
real
fact that
posts.
the government needs to strongly counter them, especially when it's fake news, so that you don't end up creating more panic than perhaps is already there.
And that responsibility lies squarely on everyone. Anyone in political life, कोई भी पार्टी का हो, मैम बोलना तो पड़ेगा कि हमारी भी पॉलिसी थी, तो इस पे फेक न्यूज मत फैलाइए. आपको भी करना पड़ेगा shows इसमें. But how does
I will
this?
only do shows on Satlaj now.
That you.
But opposition has been doing this, whichever opposition it is. Let's also be fair. Even when other parties have been in
True.
opposition,
On
they have
Aadhaar,
also
on
spread a lot
GST,
of
वो तो है.
Aadhaar, GST, all that is there for us
true.
to see. So all that is something that has been happening. I remember VP Singh reading out a Bofo's account number, which later turned out to be totally fake, but Rajiv Gandhi's government fell. So all these things have happened.
So how does the government? We can end by discussing this communication. What can they do? What should they do to address these concerns?
See, the problem is there's an inherent issue, and that is it has to be post facto. Once the viral social media posts happen, and once, as they say, misinformation happens, the government is always reactive. They can't be seen as being ahead of the curve, because you can't be seen as responding to something that you anticipate, right? So this structural issue is there. But like I said, I think the government also needs to be more open. It's just the classic idiom, right? You open the windows, let the sunlight in. We have nothing to hide. I mean, there's nobody is making money out of it, or this is a scientifically proven policy. I mean, the 10 car manufacturers who did their press conference happened almost a month after this whole thing started blowing up on social media. So I think they need to be a little more, in whatever form and fashion possible, a little more ahead of the curve. And also engage on social media. I think their social media game, I mean, so much so for, IT Cell and all of that. I think on Instagram, I think their game is quite weak. That's just
Instagram is
my
actually
view.
becoming the new.
It is.
Especially for the Gen Zers and the youngsters.
Yeah,
That's
anyone
a
who
more.
has query, your platform doesn't matter, but the government must have answers at
The
least.
government has to shift according to what the platform
Exactly.
people are consuming.
Yeah.
Facebook was big 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Now who uses Facebook?
The government has
Perhaps
smartened up
6
to
years
that.
old use it.
They've been
No, but
using
even,
influencers to communicate their point of view
So,
during elections.
exactly,
You
the
see
point he's
them
making
give
is-
interviews to influencers and not mainstream media anymore. So
मैम
I
आप
think,
influencer पे
yeah.
फिक्स हो गई हैं आप.
Influencer से influence हो गई हैं. ये बहुत influence हो गई हैं.
Even I want to be an
सतलज से भी influence
Even
हो
I
गई.
want to be an influencer. The government can come to me to counter any misinformation, please. That's my next job.
Nothing stops you, ma'am. Even in this job, that is what we do every day. आप बन सकती हैं. Okay, we'll have to leave it at that. But I'm sure you when this discussion goes on air, people will have questions. They will post their